everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so as you saw from the title, I am making a sword in the stone cake. Today is my brother's birthday, and I always try to overdo what I did last year. I think last year I did a Colosseum or a gladiator's helmet. I'm not sure. I did both of those. But, I'm going to tell you what you should and should not do because I feel like I failed at making the cake. So, now, what some people like is whether the cake is made from box or if it's made from, scratch. And, me, I can do either or, but the fastest way is doing it with a box. Sorry, I'm struggling here. I don't know why. So, I did a funfetti cake with frosting, Pillsbury frosting. No, I use Pillsbury dough frosting. I normally don't use their brand that much, but it does taste good. All right, and I also did this as pictures again. It's not really quiet around my house enough for me to record, and then the angling is just freaking weird. So it's just better if I take pictures. So I try to take as many as I can. The first picture that you're seeing is just me mixing all the ingredients together, and this is what I got out of the funfetti cake. The next thing that you should do is always spray your pans. I did a 5-inch pan, 5 inches in diameter pan, and then this I have no idea. I think it's a 3 by 12. It's 3 or 4 by 12 or 11. I'm not entirely sure. I did not measure it. It does not have it at the bottom either, so I don't know what their sizes are. But I definitely know that the round one is 5 because I've seen a 6 and the 6 is a lot bigger than that. And then you see that I put the batter. It's trying to get the words out. I put the batter in the pans up to a certain length. I didn't go all the way because I only did one batch of batter. So I kind of had a split in between the two. So I'm just kind of showing you an aerial view of... It's not even a good way to show you what the level of it was, but, I was like, oh, maybe I should do this, and, probably wasn't a good idea. Then, this is them after they had baked. You just have to leave them on a rack. The pan that I use, the round one, takes a lot longer to cook, so if you're using that pan, it's like a 45-minute pan right there. But I didn't even time any of these. I actually just, I don't put a timer on any of my cakes when it comes to using that pan, and the rectangular pan I have never used before, so I also did the same thing. I don't keep a timer on any of my cakes. It's more of just like I check up on it when I feel like it's getting too dark. When it's getting dark on top, I will check it. But otherwise, I don't really put a timer on that often. Then the next thing you should do is try to cut the edges off of the cake. Obviously, I'm not trying to make a perfect rectangle with the edges. You don't want to cut off too much of the edges, but you want to keep those scrap pieces. So keep the scrap pieces. I mean, obviously you could eat it, but we're going to also use it for something else. Then what you're going to do is you're going to cut a small piece out of there, which is what you're seeing in this picture. And and we're going to use that for the sword. This whole rectangular piece is the sword, or is going to be the sword, and the round piece is going to be the stone rock that we're using it for. Now, here's something I shouldn't have done, but I did it, and it caused a lot of problems, so just so that you don't make the same mistakes as I did, I cut 4 pieces. What you should do is just cut it and, don't cut it in half. Cut it a little over half, because you only need a small section for the handle of the sword, because the sword itself, the blade is a lot longer, should be a lot longer than the handle, or it could be vice versa. I mean, we don't know how far the stone is, the sword is into the stone, so don't cut them into 4 pieces, keep them solid, and that piece up above that you see right there, what you're going to do, as you're going to see in this picture, you're going to cut it in 2 spots. Alright? Once you cut it in 2 spots, you'll see in the next picture, you're going to want to cut it off and then try to round it out as best as you can. This cake wasn't leveled very well. I try to stop it from doing that, but it's a cake. There's frosting and other stuff you can deal with it in that fashion, but you're going to try to round it out as best as you can, and then what you're going to do is you're going to try to carve. Now, when you're carving with cake, the best thing for you to do is automatically put it in the freezer first before carving. Reason being is it makes it easier to carve, I believe. Not entirely sure. I believe that's the reason why you would freeze it. It makes it easier to carve because it's more solid, and the crumbs are not that bad. I mean, as you can see from the sides, there's a lot of crumbs, and yeah, there's going to be more coming. But you're going to try to round out the handle of it as best as you can. Now, the next you see is a diamond. You're taking the 4 pieces that you had before, those 4 rectangles, and you're gonna put it on its side and cut off all the brown to form a diamond. So you're not gonna do this because you're not gonna do it in pieces. You're gonna take that one slab and you're gonna try to cut. Hold on. You're gonna try to. Where am I? You're gonna try to cut it while it's fully solid. So, you're basically, I suggest you get a long knife for this. You're basically gonna stand it up and be very careful and cut it into a diamond shape, because a sword is not square unless you're talking about Minecraft. It's got a little bit of a diamond shape to it, especially the swords back in the day. At least the way I believe it, they had just a little bit, not too much of a diamond shape, but it was, you know what I'm talking about. I shouldn't have to describe that. And so don't do it the way you see it in the picture. So this is a do not picture. And then the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take that long piece that you saved before. You see all those crumbs over there? Jeez, I should have froze the cake. See, you need to freeze the cake. You're gonna take that, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna take the handle that you just made and you're gonna place it on top so that you can see how you want what the length of your handle is going to be. Because if you try to grab it like it's a normal sword and you see that it's a length that is perfect for it, plus perfect for the diamond shape that you made, it should be bigger than the sword blade itself, the blade of the sword itself. Yeah, I'm speaking weird today. So what you're doing is you find that out, and then you'll see I cut it. It's long, and it needs to be that way because of the way I did it. Also, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to mention it now. You have a fridge. There's a certain height to your fridge. If you want to put this cake in your fridge, you must measure how big the spaces are in your fridge so that you can put it in the fridge. So I suggest that you measure it first, then make sure you stay to that height or a little bit lower, because you don't want the cake touching, because you also got the icing or frosting you want to use, whichever, or buttercream, whichever frosting, whatever you use to coat your cake. Alright, so the next picture is the round one. I put all the other ones aside, and I'm just showing you that the way this is. Now, my cake didn't come out high in this one, because obviously I had to split in between two pans, because my parents wanted a smaller cake for him because they're making more desserts that he likes around. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the scraps that you saved from all that, except for when you try to round out the whatever. We're going to take the scraps, and what you're going to do is you're going to coat it in thin icing. It doesn't need to be thick. It really doesn't. It could be very thin. You're just coating it, and then you're just gonna you're supposed to place it on whatever you're gonna place on, and then frost it. But I did the reverse. So before you start frosting, put it on a plate that you want to put it on. Then start frosting it with a thin layer of icing. And by doing that, it's also what we call crumb coating, but because we didn't cut off anything on the cake, we're not really crumb coating anything. So the next picture you're seeing is basically what I just did. I basically put all the pieces to make it just a little bit higher and more rock-like, I guess you could say. It worked out alright, I believe. I mean, it looks kind of horrible now that you're looking at it, but that's what it does. I don't like to waste anything, you know. Alright, so the next one, you're seeing these two wooden skewers, or you probably think they're chopsticks, but they're too long to be chopsticks. What you're doing with these is you're taking them and putting them into the cake. You obviously break them down so that you have the size correct for it all. But you're gonna take them, and as you are gonna see in this picture, I stuck two of them in and started stacking the blade part of the sword. But like I said, yours is gonna stay a solid. Because I did this way, I messed up the integrity of the sword by doing it this way. It should have been one whole thing, and then the thing that protects your hand. What is that thing called? I don't know. I should know this because I love swords, and I completely forgot what it's called. But it's the thing that stays on the part of your hand when you're holding a sword, and then you got the handle. I know it's a handle, but that part there, it's called something different, I think. I'm not sure. Don't mind me. But you would basically stick that all the way into the cake, and then take that piece of take the blade part and push it on through. Try to be gentle, especially if you didn't freeze the cake beforehand, because if you don't freeze the cake beforehand, it's just very soft cake and very fragile. So you're just going to want to place it in there, okay? Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take the thing, as you can see in the picture, that thing. I'm pointing to it because I have the pictures over here. So you're going to take that thing and stick that in there. That might have came out wrong. Anyways, you're going to put it there, and then, that's how it's going to be. As you can see, it's a little lopsided. That's my fault for the way I did the cake. So don't do that. And then you would place the other one on top. You're actually not supposed to do it this way. I'm just doing it to show you what it should look like when there's no frosting on it or anything. What you're supposed to actually do is, because I was so into just trying to get the cake done, because other things needed to be done in the kitchen today as well, I couldn't show you step by step how I did everything. So what you're seeing is, what you're supposed to do is, the bottom layer of the cake should already be frosted before you put the sticks in it. Alright, and because it's the stone, you go with a grayish color. Now, I went more the darker route, as you'll see in the next picture. So I went with a darker color, and then I went with a silverish color for the blade, and then I tried to do gold, but gold is such a hard color to get, unless you actually buy one that is gold. And even if you do buy food coloring that is gold, it's not going to come out that sparkling shiny gold unless you have a spray gun and you spray it onto the cake itself, which I have done that in the past. But what you would do is, first you frost the bottom, then you would put the blade in and carefully frost it. Now, everything still has to remain frozen, at least in my opinion it should, but before frosting, you have to crumb coat everything so that when you're frosting, you don't end up with crumbs all over the place. So first you crumb coat everything, then you would put it in the freezer, then from the freezer you would start with your frosting. So you'd go with a gray color for the stone, or whatever color you really want. I mean, you could have the sword in a giant ruby for all I care. It's your design. You're just following my directions. And then it's just step by step, but you have to be very careful because when frosting, it's a long process and your fingers might touch it, but there's always a way of fixing it as long as you either buy the frosting or make it yourself. Make sure you make enough. It's better to have extra than none at all, because you could always use that extra for a later cake that you may or may not make. So as you're seeing in the next picture, this is the cake when I thought I had finished it. So I thought I had finished the cake, and as you can see, if you remember the last picture, you see that part of the sword that I was telling you I didn't know the name of it was, the one that it protects your hand, the guard. There we go. It's the guard. The guard. It got smaller. What had happened is this broke. When I tried fixing it so that it stays straight, I made a mistake and broke the other side, the side that's leaning, and I ended up with this, which it's more of a, now I went from having one type of sword to a completely different type of sword where it's just the same size as the blade. So I guess, it ended up working, and I decided to put like a blue ruby with the blue frosting up on top, and as you can see, this is not gold at all, the color. It's more of an orangish color, but I didn't have gold. And then I put some I know the stone is a little dark. It's darker than I wanted to. It's more of a coal color, but that's the color I was using, was coal black, and then I just used less of it for to make the silver color that you see in the sword. I know this cake probably looks horrible, but it's the best I can do within one day, because normally I take it step by step. First I bake the cake, Then once it's finished cooling, I fill it, crumb coat it, put it in the freezers, and then the next day I carve and frost the cake and everything. So this was like a whole 1 day process, and I skipped like tons of steps that I shouldn't have skipped. And you're just seeing different angles of the sword. Now this one, uh, the cake, as you can see, is starting to like, well, the sword is actually starting to sink down a little bit. That's why I said you should just keep it solid. Um, and so what I did was I took some vines. Yes, I took vines from outside and just put them on the cake. No, I took the same icing, turned the blue frosting to green, and I basically put vines on it like it was being like it's been there for ages and everything. I also put a little grass down at the bottom of the rock and the where the sword is at. I don't know why. I thought that was a good idea. And then I just put the vines all over, covering any mistakes that you make. The best thing about making mistakes on cakes, especially if you get free reign to do the idea, and the customer is okay with it, if you are doing it for a customer, is that it's your choice. If they say, I want it exactly look like this, you can't make any mistakes. None whatsoever. But if they give you free reign to do whatever you want to said cake, then you're just like, oh, so you want it to look somewhat like this? Is it okay if I do some minor changes and everything? And if they're okay with it, go for it. But this is what the cake finally looks like, and I hope that you enjoy it, because, well, I'm kind of hoping my brother enjoys the cake because he's the one that's got to eat it. I did not use a lot of frosting inside the cake. As you can see from the round one, normally what you're supposed to do is you cut it and you fill it with frosting, but because I put so much frosting on the outside itself, I feel like I put way too much frosting. And some people don't like frosting, so you could have a cake with no frosting inside of it. But that's just how I am. Sometimes I put filling in it, like peaches or strawberries. It's completely up to you or to the customer who wants the cake. But I have done better cakes than this. It's just, it was my first time doing a sword cake, and I'm okay with it. I'm not as happy as I thought I would be with it, because in my head I was picturing it one way, and when mistakes start happening, that's when that's when I'm like, "Oh my god, what should I do?" And then you're just like, okay, think." And then I have my father who's annoying me, and I can't think when he's around because he's annoying me. But I try to think of a good idea, and I'm like, okay, so I left some pieces of cake alone, and thank goodness my father didn't eat all of the pieces that were left over. I go and say, okay, let me use this and see how it looks. It still looks like a sword. It's not what was in my head. The color of the handle of the blade isn't what I want it to be. The sword got a little bent. Maybe it got damaged. Come up with a nice backstory for it. I think it's good for what I have done so far as my first time. I could have done better, but I like to take things a few days at a time so that I can get it correct. If something does happen, I can fix it. But what I probably should have done is that part, I just had it, the guard of the sword probably should have been a lot thicker. So what I suggest you do is make it thicker. So what you can do is, instead of just using one batter of cake, use two. Just make two so that you have extra and that you're okay with what you have. I mean, I don't have time to run and get another funfetti box. You know, I just didn't want to do it, and I thought I could do it, and I did do it in the best way possible that I can. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys. Well, I won't see you because, you know, you're on the other side of the TV or whatever it is you're watching. But I will see you next time, and goodbye, everybody.